Hi, my name's Mark. I'm one of the pastors here at Trillium. We've been looking at the whole notion of love in life. There's a great quote that I came across. It went like this: "The search for love is but the honest searching out of everything that interferes with love." It got me thinking about what really interferes with love in my life. And I realized there's a basic aspect of my personality and about human nature itself that tends to want to project outside of itself our basic sensibilities to life. So our expectations, our assumptions, our values, experience, we project them out onto that world out there. Voltaire once said, "If God has created us in his image, we have returned the favor." What Voltaire was talking about is our tendency to project ourselves onto that world out there, onto other people, and under circumstances is also that same tendency in us to project our own instincts and sensibilities onto God. And in a sense, what Voltaire is reminding us is that we often create the God of our own experience. We often create the God of our own understanding, which doesn't get us very far. And that's true for love too, you know. The Greeks had 4 words for love, and yet, in a sense, I think it's only that 4th word, agape, that really gets close to the heart of the love that God has for us. Storge, eros, philos, those first 3 words for love. Storge, that primal love a parent has for a child and the desire to protect that child. The eros, the romantic love, the love based on attraction. And philos, that camaraderie, that love based on shared common experience we call brotherly or sisterly love. These are wonderful forms of love, but for whatever reason, the New Testament doesn't really use those 3 words to describe love. It uses this 4th word, agape. We don't really even know what agape means from the ancient literature, the ancient Greek literature. It doesn't happen that often. It doesn't really rise in the literature that often. And when it does, we don't really understand the kind of nuance the Greek writers are trying to get at. And yet the New Testament writers take this obscure word called agape to describe God's love for us. It's the principal word for love in the New Testament. And it's always been a mystery to me why the New Testament writers want to embrace a word that is almost never used in the ancient Greek world, and which the broader world that they spoke to didn't really understand. And I think one of the primary reasons is they're trying to inhibit or frustrate our tendency to project our own understanding of love onto God. God offers us agape even though we don't really understand what it means. We want to project back out onto God our own understandings of love, even if they don't really take us to where we need to go. See, there's this offering of us this day of agape. How to translate agape: unconditional love, divine love, total love, true love, perfect love. I remember years ago going to a wedding that they sang this old hymn called "Old Perfect Love." It describes a love that's so different from what the world teaches. The world teaches us that we find love based on deception, by not being ourselves. Yet this hymn and the scriptures as a whole teach us that love can only be based on sharing the truth of ourselves. There's this wonderful understanding that's been given to us to this day that we are allowed to be true to ourselves because we were made in the likeness of God. We are one with God. We are God's child this day. We don't have to hide ourselves away. And this offering of perfect love to us is a blessing, a miracle that comes to us. This is the path we're on with our lives. This is what we're meant to do. Instead of projecting our own limited sensibilities onto the world, we're invited this day to extend ourselves, or extend that love that comes to us from God outwards into the world. The scriptures tell us that vertical love that God has for us is also to be extended outwards horizontally to our neighbors, to our family members, to the stranger we meet. That agape, that divine love, that perfect love, is also to be mediated out through us to the world. We are, in a sense, God's hands, God's heart, God's eyes this day. What do you think? Is that something that interests you? I've certainly come to the realization in my own life that as beautiful as storge and eros and philos are, they can't get me to where I want to go. In a sense, they are the love that lives within the projection. But when projection stops, there is a 4th love, agape, true love, perfect love, divine love that's offered to us, and it's allowed to be extended through us this day. Martin Luther King once said, "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality." When the projection stops, we find true reality. And it's unarmed truth, which is the understanding that we don't have to pretend to be something that we're not, because we already are children of children of God, of children of the Creator. And this unconditional love, agape, will be the normal way that people interact with each other. That's the normal sharing of life. And so the question really comes to us today, where do we begin? How do we begin that journey, that walk in agape with each other? And I think the first place we begin is by understanding that we're being asked to really put aside a whole understanding of life and instead embrace a new understanding, that we cannot just use our normal experiences and expectations and assumptions and values to get us to where we want to go. That this agape asks us to question in the most deepest way the basic assumptions and sensibilities we bring to life. In a sense, that's what the scriptures were getting at when they talked about sin, that we're sinners, that we're in a sense out of step with reality in some basic way, that we have made our modality of living one based on projection rather than extending love. And I invite you just to be humble in yourself and not to go around with all your expectations and sensibilities, projecting them outwards, but to be conscious when that happens, to pull it back in. Don't let it just reach out through you. Pull it back in and instead embrace and extend love to people without judgment, without expectation, without projection. And you will find in the midst of that, there will be a blessing given to you. A miracle will come to you. The light of Christ, the Holy Spirit will shine in all of you, and you will experience peace beyond understanding. So, retract your own sensibilities, pull back your projection. Instead, be prepared to extend out the power of God in love, agape, this day, and change the world around you. Go in peace. Be God's agent of love today.